Welcome to Tail Learn Code. Here there will be tales about software development, learning from each other, code to build solutions. And now your host, Chad Green.
All right, and now we will officially start. Now that we've done our intro and I worked a long time getting that intro right, so it's
amazing.
I want to show it every single day, right?
Yeah.
So again, welcome. I really do appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us for this. These have been a lot of fun. I've been really enjoying these. I'm so glad I had this harebrained idea to just interview people.
It's very, very brave to make this many interviews happen in this short amount of time.
Well, yeah, if I'm anything, I'm stupid. And,
I would not say that. I can't agree with you there.
Willing to do whatever it takes, right? But no, like I said, they've been a lot of fun. A lot of them have been like folks with you who I've known for years now. I'm not sure how many Code PaLOusas you've spoken at least 3 or 4.
That would be my answer. I think 3 or 4. I mean, it's amazing every time we go down there from Michigan. I mean, it's a very nice area compared to usually the snow or the. Well, actually, no, it's usually the fall, so it's not that bad.
Well, no, it has up until last year. It's been in the spring.
So
it has been, March. Okay. I'm not sure if you're there. One year it was June. I mean, we can't really settle on a date, but
yeah.
The fun part about Code PaLOusA is that we are too big to fit in most places, and we're too small to matter the places we fit. So our dates kind of go around a little bit. Right. Although last year, I don't remember. Were you here last year? I don't remember.
I was. That was the first year at the new location, right? And that was actually really amazing. I really enjoyed that last year.
And I think we pretty much have settled on a date, even though, like this year, everything's a mess, but, we stuck with the dates, even with it being a mess. But, and the hotel likes us being there at that time of year and love where we're at.
Right. That's one of my favorite parts about Code PaLOusA is the fact that you're like literally right downtown, and everyone after the sessions, they just go out and they hang out together. We hit the various social events plus other bars and restaurants, and it's just an amazing time overall. I think the value of the social activity is just as much as the sessions.
No, I agree. That's why I'm not ready to announce anything because I'm still working on it, but we're working on some things to make the social experience as best as possible. I mean, I sent a tweet out yesterday, I think it was, said, as close to a real conference as else, other than, you got to figure out your bourbon situation, right? Because
well, don't worry, we can handle that.
I can't virtually send over bourbon. That's not possible yet, right? It's
right. Right.
I have a feeling one of the first things that people will transport once we can do that is bourbon, right? 'Cause everyone loves bourbon.
It's true. So,
well, great. So let's first just go through an introduction of yourself, especially because I love it. On your profile, you say you have a heck of an interesting story of how your all's company started. So start off with, about you and how you got into technology.
Oh, yes. It's a very interesting story. So, in case you don't know me, like Chad mentioned, my name is Brian McKeiver. I am co-owner and solutions architect at BizStream. And we are a custom software development shop in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Actually, a little tiny suburb called Allendale, but most people know Grand Rapids, so that's usually what we go with. Our building, which I'm sitting in right now for the first time in a little bit, is kind of in a restricted mode, but we're a company of about 30 people, and we've been doing .NET development for close to 18 years now. Mm-hmm. And it started off, the reason I say it's an interesting story, is it started off with my business partner, Mark, and I, just the two of us. And we literally were right out of college, kind of got together from basically, we went to school together, we had separate jobs, but then a large employer here in West Michigan decided that there wasn't a spot for me after I graduated. And circumstances just happened that Mark and I had a lunch meeting planned for that day. We had a few drinks during that lunch because of my, so-called job being gone. And he basically offered me a job at his company at that moment, which was just him. And he showed me some ASP Classic code. He showed me what he was doing for a very niche industry. And I was like, hey, I know how to do ASP Classic. So that's where I started. And the two of us shared a computer for that first couple weeks. We shared a desk, 2 chairs, did a lot of pair programming, and built a software as a service product that's still running today. Actually, the niche is juvenile facility management.
Oh, now got a video freezing up here. See if it recovers here in a moment. Yeah, Brian, I don't know if you can hear me, but your video is completely frozen at the moment. Yeah, now we're getting network issues. All right.
So
we lost
because
you
of
there
our knowledge on that
we
platform,
did lose you there for a moment. I don't know if you know that.
Okay.
You just told us, you just told us juvenile management or facility management.
Okay.
And then that's where we lost you.
Oh, sorry about that. I'll blame the internet.
It is the internet's fault, but
yeah. Juvenile facility management. We're in a couple states around our region, mainly Michigan. We're like 26 counties in Michigan and a bunch of other states as well. And it's been growing, but that's like one part of the two-headed monster that is BizStream.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is our services aspect of things. Our services business is all about .NET consulting and integration and custom software. So we do a ton with content management systems. We used to build our own, but everyone who's in the CMS space, I think that's a rite of passage. You have to build your own CMS at one point. We learned back then that there's just got to be a better way. I can't tell you how many times I've written a login and password screen to a web app or website and no longer want to do that. So decided that at that point, there's something out there that maybe we could use to give us a head start or a jump start on our projects. We looked, and at that point, actually, we did a lot of SharePoint, really back when it was like SharePoint 2011 or 2013 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. Looked at other things and settled on this little tool called Kentico. And Kentico is an amazing .NET backed CMS. It's now branded as Kentico Experience, and have basically created almost 200 websites for people across the country. Very big brands, very small brands that you wouldn't even know about, but it's a CMS that works really well, and we've implemented it all those times. And
oh man, he's freezing up again. Hope this is not going to be like we had with Sam Basu, who kept on freezing. It's trying. You can see like it's moving. Oh, there we go. We got you back again.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
It happens.
So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. I apologize.
You're not the first one who's been like this. Sam Basu had the worst luck. Yeah. It was just going in and out the whole time, and I had a fun time editing that video. Oh, that's nice. Now I'm getting something crashing on my computer.
Oh.
I'm
technology.
Actually, well, I'm trying to do something and I see it fails. So we did this on the stream, but I had a need to move just shy of 52 million records from a SQL database out to Azure storage. And this morning we were talking about how we were going to test this thing, right? And how do we validate? We move these kind of records. One thing about Azure blob storage is there's not a really good way to get the count of blobs in there.
Right.
Because basically it just has to go and keep on getting the list. And it just gets it by blocks. And so sure enough, and that's what Azure Storage Explorer will do. And I was just going to see how long it would actually count these records. It just crashed. So apparently I might have found it will hit a limit, and it says,
Yeah. Well, honestly, Azure Storage Explorer is like my go-to tool for any kind of
I use it a lot,
in storage. It's an amazing thing, and it's free. I love it. And I will tell you that when we have a lot of our clients that put their like media libraries out for a CDN in Azure, we tell them like try to not do more than a couple hundred items nested in one object, because that is the enumeration that just takes forever to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we're losing him again. I can see this is gonna be a fun one. What we're gonna do, we're gonna try something once he comes back on here, so he can hear me say it. All right, we lost you again. Here's what I'm gonna try. Here's what I'm gonna try, because this is what we did with Sam. I'm gonna hang up and I'm gonna call you back. Because sure enough, when I did that with Sam, it seemed to solve all the problems. So just a second.
Sure. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll see if this solves the problems today. we'll see if that solves the problems this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you know all these tricks, Chad. See, that's the thing. You've done it so much. You're an expert at it.
I've done it a couple dozen times now. So yes, I am learning. I'm learning the tricks. I'm definitely not to the Carl and Richard standard of doing interviews, but working on it. Oh, we're losing your video.
Yep. I think it's coming in. Because I just got yours loaded in too.
Yeah. Well, yours came in and we lost it for a second, but there we go. All right. Yeah. So you were saying a couple hundred times. Sure enough. So I mean, our CDN is in. So we're a content company, right? That's what we do. And our CDN is in Azure Storage, and sure enough, in there, I don't think anything's over 100 items per container. This is just one of these weird things. So again, we're a content company, and you can write notes and you can mark up content, right? And it's a markup is what we're trying to save. And we went through a whole debate as to how what is the right way to store this stuff, because again, it's 52 million records and growing, right? Hence the reason why we had to get it out there.
That's crazy.
It also represents 320 gigabytes of data in our SQL database, and that's the reason why we had to move it. Right? We are quickly approaching a terabyte, and what we have found is once we go to terabyte, in order to keep the same level of service we have, it's going to cost us $3,500 extra a month just for the production database.
Wow.
So plus our downstream databases, right? And sure, we're eventually going to hit a terabyte, and that'll be fine, right? Because if it's just because of same number of users, just because of this one table, we could do things, right? That's why we're moving it. But yeah. So we worked on different things. I mean, we looked at the idea of
right. Like, again.
Yeah, it is still freezing up. Not as bad as it was. Yeah. But it was still freezing up. Yeah, we looked at the idea of doing like a container per user, but then then we're going to have like 5,000 containers, and I'm like, well, that's not really the best idea. So there is no good solution, right? And it works. I mean, we've done performance testing; it's working. It's just trying to count the records is the hard part.
Crazy.
The crazy things you do, yeah, exactly. The crazy things you have to do sometimes with technology. Yep. But so you've been talking about you've been using Kentico. Actually, I've been learning more about Kentico. I've been watching. I'm drawing a blank his name. Dev Garage on Twitch.
Ryan Overton.
Ryan Overton. Yes, I've been watching him quite a bit, and he's been obviously he does a lot with that on his stream. Yep. So I've been learning more about it. I find it to be a very interesting product.
It is. I get to talk to Ryan almost every week and a half because he's kind of one of the main evangelists in the MVP program, and I'm actually a Kentico MVP. So I get to represent Kentico Experience and their other brand, Kentico Content, which is their headless CMS offering.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Now I was going to say, I noticed today, so you're also doing a podcast around all that?
Yeah, so I run my own podcast. I aspire to someday be like you, Chad. It's called Kentico Rocks. It's really kind of been homebrewed. It started with a friend of mine, Brian Soltis, who I believe you know as well. And Brian's now at Microsoft and very busy in his new role. So I've kind of just taken it upon myself. I interview people in the Kentico community, but I also talk a lot about Azure and .NET because that's really my main passion is around developing and delivering solutions for our clients that work with Azure. And actually, this last weekend, I was playing around with a Logic app to try to listen to a webhook from a recording of a video site that we're doing for a client, and had a ton of fun just playing around with Logic apps and incoming webhooks. And it's impressive to me how much, it took like less than an hour to go from not knowing much about it to really having it fully working with our Slack and posting those events when those webhooks came in. So that's a really cool technology.
I most things, obviously there's some things in Azure that are very hard to get into, but most things within Azure I find extremely easy to get into, which for me makes it very easy to do presentations. I mean, I can easily do a 1 hour presentation and have you fully up to speed on, at least to get you going and actually write an application. Sure, you need to spend a lot more time to actually make it work really well, but to get you up and running, usually, with an hour session, I can, and I've done that with event hubs. I haven't done logic apps. I've done some talks where I talk about logic apps, but I've only used logic apps a couple of times, so I find it very interesting.
Yeah, one of the things that, like you said, if you have the right setup, you can get it going in like 10 minutes, right? The core of what you want to do. But like my challenge with this specific scenario was the system was not mine. That was actually, pushing the webhook to the logic app, and I couldn't change the payload of the body. And they were doing kind of this weird format of payload equals and then JSON inside of that, not just a real true JSON object.
Right.
And I didn't know this, but you can actually do your own sort of kind of manipulation to the incoming payload through variables right in that logic app without writing any code. It's almost like its own little syntax and own little tiny language of transforming the text, set a variable, and then suddenly I was able to strip that out and get the real true JSON object as a true JSON object variable. Yeah. And then everything just started to work from that point on with the designer. So a little challenge, but like you said, it's always about what can you do to make it work.
Yeah. It's, to me, that's really the biggest part of our job, right? And what I find is the more senior we get, the more it is, well, what are the tricks we can do? It's I always find it funny, talking to to more junior folks. And they're like, oh, well, we've got to do it this way. I'm like, yeah, well,
right.
You can do it that way. But if you do it this way, it's going to be a whole lot quicker, or it's going to, it's a lot where, something is going to be better in this way or another, right?
Yeah, that's what even more challenging is like when you're an agency like us and you have a client budget to figure out and worry about and try to hit, you have to tell the developers that, hey, I know that there's 3 ways to do this, and I know you want to do it the best way possible with the most development standards in there and the best automation and the best test coverage. Right, that's great. They didn't pay for that, right? They paid for can you get this done quick for us? So you always have that fine balance of you can't have 130% quality when the client is saying, I just need it done as quick as possible and we're not going to reuse it. Yeah. Or, have the reverse of that scenario of, hey, how can you take this and make it an enterprise quality scalable thing to set us up for growth? Well, as long as you're willing to kind of pay for that, we can do that too. But that's one thing that I think a junior or mid developer, they struggle with in our world quite a bit of, there's the best way to do things ever. And that's how developers typically want to do it. But there's also at the end of the day, we got to get stuff done on a timeline and on a budget.
Well, the funny thing, I mean, that's definitely, because I've done the consulting thing. That's definitely a problem in consulting. It's a problem really in any part of development. I mean, I go through that, right? Where, because I work for a product company and people are like, oh, here let's do this. This would, they'll say, well, this will save us $100 a month, right? And I'm like, yeah, but it's going to cost me $200,000 to write it. Right?
Yeah.
So, it's maybe that's not really where we need to spend the time, right?
Right. Even
though I'm like, I would love to do it, right? That sounds awesome, but we need to do this that where we'll make money on it, right?
Yep.
But that is the hard part, right? And I think that's the hard part about becoming more senior, right? Is understanding that, and more importantly, being able to relate it in a non-negative way. I don't have it so much where I'm at now, but like when I was working out at the Army and I was running that large team, that spent more of my time convincing the team members that it's not as bad as they think, right? Or we just need to do this, or that type of thing.
Yeah, it's always interesting leading the team. I mean, that's part of what I do almost every day in helping them unblock them or help them get to the next step. The easiest thing would be to just say, you know what, I'm just gonna do this for you. I'll take care of it and come back to me later. But that's something that like literally is like the worst thing is you need to be able to actually give them some rope, let them try, maybe even let them fail, and maybe even let them fail in front of the client, because that's really how you learn. In my experience, I've failed so many times on projects, internal and external, because people ask me like, well, how do you kind of always know like what we should do next? I'm like, well, it's because I did this before and it failed 3 ways. So let's try the 4th way, and hopefully you don't have to fail 3 times for you. So, it just comes with experience of doing it. And it's a fun challenge. It's what I love to do every day.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, we do learn a lot more from our failures than we do from our successes. And as a leader, that is what to me, that's what our job is, right? Is to allow the team to fail, but make sure, number one, make sure they'll fail miserably, right? I mean, because
Right.
you don't want them to give up on everything because of how horribly we have failed, right? But at the same rate, I mean, knowing that people learn better from failure than success, you have to allow for that, but also not allow it that it's going to destroy your business, right? Because that's
somewhat important too.
Yes, and probably I would say more so your consulting business is more important, right? Me, if a tech project fails, I gotta explain to the CEO, right? But he's my CEO, right? Whereas if your tech project fails, you might be explaining to a CEO of your customer, right? Which is that's an uncomfortable position, right?
Yep. So you pick your battles wisely, is what it comes down to.
Exactly. So, so you talked about how your company got started. I mean, how did you get into technology? What was the drive to get you into technology?
Well, yeah. So it started very early on. I think my first PC was a Commodore 64.
Mm-hmm.
I was about 8, and I got that from my parents. I cracked it open. I was like, wow, what is this? And it really was, how many video games can I possibly play on this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Is where it really came from. I think I had a cousin who gave me a bunch of really large floppy disks, the big ones for the Commodore 64. And I wanted to make a menu to swap out the games fast enough. So that was when I first wrote my first script, or I think it was a script in those worlds. Who knows? It's been so long. To switch out the games. And, first time cracking open an editor, seeing what I could do with like probably if and go to statements. And that's where it was born. I got into it because I did enjoy the aspect of automating how easy it was to play the different games, and just kind of grew from there. I knew probably by my next computer, which was probably a compact HP type of 286, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Cracking that open and adding like the turbo boost to make it a 486 or 386, whatever it was, and upgrading the RAM. So I got into the hardware aspect of it a little bit, but still the software always interested me more. I wrote a little bit in Visual Basic, got into more C in college. But basically, even in high school, we had a programming class in my high school.
Oh, cool.
And I knew more about programming than the teacher did at that point. And that's when I knew, okay, maybe I could be kind of good at this. And it was a spark that, something that I always loved doing. So I've taken it into the professional world. I've been basically programming professionally since I was 18, which is quite a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The gray hair kind of gives it away. And I've always done it. I've done it on the side. That's why I blog. It's why I speak at these conferences. It's why I'm running the podcast. It just kind of came from there, that my love of technology and programming. And I have a great team around me here that we kind of motivate each other to always be learning and always growing. And now we try to give back to the development community by doing the blog posts and things like that. Like on this past Sunday, I worked pretty much all day because it was rainy and nasty out in Michigan, of course, and got a post about Azure app configuration in Blazor, because Blazor is something that interested me recently. So, it's just something that I love doing. I've always done it since I was a kid.
That's awesome. It's funny. I was just now thinking about this. Pretty much anyone, not anyone, but a lot of people, late 30s on, right? They kind of learn, if they've been doing technology their whole, since they were kids, a lot of it was in order to play games. Because back in those days, it was either, switching the games out, or, I'm a little bit older. For me, it was, you weren't able to buy discs for games. You had to buy the magazines and then type in all the code for the, that's how I learned how to code. More anything else was typing in those programs, hoping that I didn't mess up any line of the code as I was transcribing in. But that's something that kids nowadays, it's different now. Granted, they have really cool tools nowadays to learn how. Yeah. But it won't have that same. It won't necessarily be just to find a different way to play games.
Right. That's why I'm just so jealous of like the kids these days when they first come up. Like, they have GitHub, they have open source, they have knowledge everywhere on the internet. They have Stack Overflow, they have Channel 9, YouTube, all these great places to find content about doing what we do. And we didn't have any of that, right? I was like I can remember putting a phone into a modem and hoping it would connect to try to get to a bulletin board. Like, that's where it started for me, and it was a challenge. I think that was the thing I liked about it. It was like, I can figure this out. It's like a puzzle, but we gotta make it work. But now, I'm looking at the people that we run a BizStream Academy as part of our company, and we give back and we teach high school students how to code with basically just pure HTML, JavaScript, and CSS
That's awesome.
at the very beginnings. And we ran, I think, 250 kids through our program in the last 4 or 5 years that we've done BizStream Academy. And it's just like the same thing. We're trying to show them, like, you don't need anything these days. You need a computer with Notepad, and that's about it. And you can make a web page, or you can make something happen in the scripting world. And some of them are amazing, and they come to us there, JavaScript, and they're looking to how to take it to the next level. Many of them do know HTML, and it's kind of a refresher on CSS. But we're hoping to just spark them and show them that this is amazing things that you can do with technology. And our field is awesome. I mean, I think there's so much opportunity in the tech world.
Yeah, no, and sure enough, you made me think about that. I mean, BizStream, they've been a sponsor of Code PaLOusa before, but also, I know a lot of people up in Michigan, and BizStream's always given back to the community, which is awesome, right? It's the same mentality. I mean, you were talking about why you speak and everything, and it's the same, same idea of the company doing the same thing, right? Which is great to see.
Thanks.
Not every company can, number one, but not every company does, right?
Right.
But it's great to see that you all have decided to take the same mentality of, again, like you were doing with as a speaker, but also doing as a company, right?
Yeah.
Because most of us who are speakers do not necessarily have companies that are even in a position to do that,
right.
And I don't want to say don't care to, right? I mean, there's different reasons, why you do and do not. So I know for me, like my company, it's different in the sense that, so that, number one, we're not a technology company. We're a medical education company, but we're an education company, which is why, that's one reason why they hired me. They love the fact that I was going out and speaking, even though I'm not speaking about what they're doing medical, but they just love the fact, oh, you're an educator, right? We're all educators. Right. That's what, that's why we, part of the reason why I got hired. Yep. And let me tell you, as a speaker, it's been refreshing to work for a company that actually appreciates the fact that I go out and speak instead of, oh my God, he's going to be out again.
Right. I know it is a challenge. I've heard from other speakers as well that sometimes it's hard to find the time. It's hard to do the activities that they want to do and are passionate about. And, I get it. And even as like the business owner part of me has to remind myself, like, okay, can't always be doing the after hours speaking work. I got to do this for the company. So I think everybody has a challenge in life to find that right balance.
Yeah.
But I think you're in a good spot if a company allows you to do what you're passionate about. And that's what we tell almost everybody we run into. Like, you will be successful if you do what you're passionate about.
Yes. Yeah. No, agreed. Yeah. I mean, well, I tell everyone, I mean, part of the reason why I have the job I have right now, and I love this company, is because of my speaking, right? It's how I got known to them. And again, they're not a technology company, right? I mean, yes, we have a technology product, but half our company is technology because we're small, we're only 30 some odd people. Well, obviously, half the company is technology, the other half is writing the content. But
right.
So it's a pretty lean ship, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, but sure enough, I loved your comment. You said, let's talk about Azure apps, which. And you probably remember putting it in because it's been a couple of weeks since then. But I mean, sure enough, you're going to be talking about how to optimize your .NET app services, which is I don't think a lot of people think of it that way, right? And I like the way how you put it in your abstract. It's not IaaS, right? It is something different. Mm-hmm. So I mean, so obviously, I mean, what is the key takeaway from that session?
Sure. So most of the work we do, we deploy to Azure for all of our clients, and it's many things. Some of them have IaaS in Azure. Some of them have on-premise, but most of them realize that, wait, is there a better way to do this? Because they've heard of platform as a service. And in doing this for a couple of years now with PaaS, we have found that it's advantageous to use that type of resource over a full-blown server in certain scenarios. especially when you're dealing with maybe one large code base with one main database, like most marketing websites are, or most e-commerce websites are. The advantages with PaaS come into the fact that you can usually automate your deployment very easily to that resource. And that resource can be templated and automated almost like infrastructure as a code when spinning up the actual app pool that is the Azure App Service. You can, get the benefit of the fact that if that resource needs to scale up for demand, you can do that with a click of a button, and you can scale back down. You can either do that trigger basis or threshold basis. So the scaling factor and the performance factor that it gives you is very easy to control. And in my opinion, maybe a little bit easier to control than a full-blown server or servers that I've seen some clients have in the past and had to work with. And the solution can kind of be chosen to meet your needs, like whether you need a test workload or a production workload. You can choose with a click of a button, how big or how little you want to spin up, even though I know many other resources can do that. But when it comes to like the tooling supports with Visual Studio, where most of the .NET projects are, or even VS Code, there's a publish extension that you can basically say one-click deploy to that endpoint in Azure. That's a nice advantage, not having to worry about maybe open up a server and figure out where it goes with IIS. I mean, you can still do that with web deploy and things like that, but it just seems a little bit more natural to push it right to, an Azure App Service. Microsoft has made that really easy in Visual Studio. I like that ability a lot. And I think one of the things that's like icing on the cake is the deployment slots in Azure App Services, where you can actually have zero downtime when you're doing your deployments, because you can deploy to a test slot, make sure it works, do your validation, and then in like a click of a button, swap out a stage to production and reverse the two live experiences for your website. So that's something that's not that easy to do in IIS. I mean, I'm sure you could come up with ways to start and stop IIS websites to kind of handle that, but it's ridiculously easy in app services. But when you start getting into the main slot with deployment slots, how those settings apply to each of those slots, and are they inherited or are they not inherited, it becomes like a little bit of a new world. So that was the motivation for my session. I'm going to review those settings in the session. We'll talk about, should you be 32-bit? Should you be 64-bit? Where that makes sense, where it doesn't. Should you have some of the advanced things? Like most people don't really know what HTTP 2 is yet, and now even HTTP 3 is even on the roadmap at some point. How to do really easy encryption with SSL. That's kind of built into Azure apps now. It really is a really good experience of using those things, but you do have to know a little bit about them. So I've run into a lot of companies, a lot of developers, even on my team, who are afraid of changing those settings. And my goal is to really demystify it and say, you know what, you just have to think about it for a little bit. And if you choose the right settings, this thing is going to perform even faster and better than what you're used to.
I'm curious, are you going to be looking at the difference between Windows versus Linux hosting?
Yeah, so I've actually given this session a couple times, even before Linux hosting was an option.
Right.
And nowadays, that is a key choice. And it really kind of comes down to like, are you really doing .NET full framework still with 4.7 or 4.8? Or are you doing .NET Core, maybe .NET 5, which is what we're now into here at BizStream quite a bit. And, can you save some performance? But with the auto build solution that, Linux is a little bit newer, slightly behind where some of the auto build happens. And there's some nuances about, we had an issue with a client who went Linux app services. They didn't necessarily tell us ahead of time, and we had to kind of educate them that, this is a full framework project we're still working on with you. We're not quite in .NET Core, so that was a little bit of a challenge. So yeah, I'll cover that as well.
Oh, cool. I mean, I asked that personally because that's something I'm actually getting ready to look at. Because like we're currently using Windows, which I wouldn't, because that's natural. But intuition tells me that it, be more performant over on Linux, and we would. I mean, again, it wouldn't be a humongous savings, but it would be savings, right? And so
there's a little bit of a price difference. It's a little bit nicer on the Linux side, of course. But you when you use some of the tooling, you have to remember, okay, over in the Linux side, you're going to have SSH, and you're not going to have command or kudo exactly the same setup the way that you do in the Windows side. So if you can get over those little small differences, and if you're kind of versed and have a pretty broad background and being able to run some commands, you should be fine. I mean, again, as long as you're .NET Core or Standard or .NET 5, it's gonna just work.
Yeah, we're core and standard, so we're good there. And it's funny. I've been talking to my VP about it, and he's like, "Well, I don't know," and I'm like, "Well, he's like, how do you know it's going to work?" I'm like, "Well, I compile everything on a Linux server, so I figured it's going to work, right?" It's
pretty good indication,
yeah. Because if it's not working, then somehow I'm compiling on a machine that doesn't work, right? So it's and that's why my intuition tells me it'll be faster, because I know how much faster it is to build within Azure DevOps. You pick that Ubuntu box, and it's a humongous difference in the performance it takes to build it as opposed to Windows box.
Yep.
And a lot of it's just that spin up of the Windows, and that's what makes it so much longer. I agree. Now I got my dog barking. I was waiting for background noise. I should have started off with letting everyone know that there might be background noise, because I'm actually in the middle of having my bathrooms remodeled upstairs. So so far, luckily, I mean, like a half hour before, they were doing a lot of cutting, and it was loud.
Well, I mean, between the cutting, the background noise, and their internet challenges at the beginning, I feel like now we're in the sweet spot of this, because it's been pretty good, pretty stable, and I've enjoyed the conversation.
Yes, yeah, me too. So, something else I know that you've done some talks on. I don't know if you submitted to Code PaLOusa or not, but or at least I believe you've done talks about app configuration, right?
Yeah, so that's actually my next one before Code PaLOusa is for Sci-Fi DevCon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new conference put on by Brian Gorman, who's also a good friend of mine, and I know he's been at the various conferences.
Yep.
He's basically challenged everyone that, hey, just because we can't do a physical event doesn't mean we still can't do virtual. So I think that was his motivation in creating this one really quickly. It's going to be all about feature flags with Azure app configuration in Blazor. So that's also why I've been working on those last couple weekends, just getting the presentation ready. It's a newer service from Azure when you talk about Azure app configuration, and it not to be confused with Key Vault, because both of them kind of play in that configuration space. That they could be used together, actually, which is a good practice. But my thought was, hey, what are these feature flag things that I saw in there when I was looking at it for the first time? And I think I checked it out for the first time probably last December when it was still in preview. And I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. The whole idea of being able to change a flag in Azure that changes the behavior of your application at runtime. And the most classic way to explain it is, think about you're running a production website and there's a problem. There's an exception that's handling and you don't know what's going on. You can't figure it out just by looking at it. So one of the classic examples is you could have a feature flag that determines your logging level in your application. So normal production experience, you have the flag turned off because you don't want to track debugging information to slow down performance. But with a click inside of Azure App Configuration, you could switch that flag to on. And if your code knows about it, it's set up to dynamically refresh from the configuration source in Azure, and suddenly your logging is enabled without redeploying the code.
Right.
So no code change, no deployments, no maybe hand editing a config file in production, like I'm sure all of us are guilty of at some point. You take that out of the dependency chain inside of the file system. That may cause like an app restart if you're in the old .NET world. And you turn it on and you get more logging. So it's basically a nice way that you can have flags that change the behavior of the application. Another example would be maybe you want to beta test a new area of your website, like maybe a member login area that only certain people can get to in certain times, and you want to open it up in production or turn it off and on based off like a menu item. So you can hide or show menu items. You can actually change anything in the Razor components or the Razor view if it's just an MVC core site with that flag. Because basically it kind of comes with like a little bit of a tag helper if you're in the MVC world as well. So it's just a nice, easy way to kind of change some configuration variables. You can even do some other just raw settings if you want to in there as well. And I like it because it's one more thing that, it kind of protects you from maybe accidentally breaking the site when you need to make that frantic change. So it's a pretty cool service. I'm going to talk quite a bit about it. There's some gotchas that I've learned with using it. I actually used it in a real world event. One thing I like to do outside of work is actually do CrossFit, even though it may not look like it. I've been doing CrossFit for a couple of years now. I'm actually one of the worst in the class, but it's a challenge because I've never done weightlifting before. I was a runner in high school, but I put on a lot of weight, in the last couple, 10 years. So trying to work that off a little bit, trying to be a
I
little
can't
healthier.
imagine how you put on weight doing software development. I mean,
Oh, I have no idea.
we move around all day long. I mean, how do you put on weight?
The bourbon down in Louisville had nothing to do with it either.
Yeah, exactly.
So I spun up a Blazor site for an event that we were doing, a fundraiser where we were having a CrossFit competition, and there were various teams. We were doing something called rolling, which is basically a combination of a row machine and bowling. So each person has to row to 100 meters, and for every meter you're on or off, your team has to do burpees, which sounds horrible, and trust me, it is. But you have 10 frames, so each person rows in a frame to try to get to 100, and the lowest score wins, obviously. So I made a scoreboard system for that event, and I had to do it in like a week and a half because it kind of came up out of nowhere. Used Blazor, and basically I had it all tested. It was working the night before. I entered all the teams, so each person had their phone up and they could add, hey, yep, we got a 3 on this frame, or a 2 or a 0. And sure enough, I got to the event. It started to work for the first part of the event, and then suddenly it just, I'm not sure what the problem was. Well, now I know what the problem was, but during that time I had no idea what the problem was, because I rolled out a live update that morning to update the scoreboard in real time with Blazor. It wasn't really all that documented yet, but so basically I made a new feature that I would have been really nice to have a flag to turn it on or off in case something went wrong. And that's where, again, some motivation came from to use this service, that I could have saved myself some egg on my face, because again, I failed in production.
Yep.
That's how we learn. And now I've used it in that application. So the session I'm going to walk through how I've injected it into that application, and I can now turn off and on that live reload feature. So kind of a real world scenario I thought was kind of interesting, and that's kind of why I'm going to talk about it at Sci-Fi DevCon.
Cool. No, it's like I said, it was about December. It was about the time I found the app configuration, and just fell in love with it right away. I mean, it's a great thing. We started to use it. We're not using it a whole lot yet. What I really would love, so sure enough, they built it in. So if you're doing an ASP.NET site, you're golden. If you're doing Java, I forgot the name of the Java technology, but I know they got it built up for
like Node.js.
No, something else.
Maybe TypeScript.
No, it's definitely not TypeScript, because that's actually my problem. Angular's not there yet. Okay. Now I'm going to look it up, because let's see here.
I don't know whichever ones. If only there was a tool for us to look.
Yeah, that's actually why I'm looking it up, because now this is going to drive me crazy. I remember this. Let's see, app config.
Yeah, one of the things to know about me while you're looking that up is I'm not a front end person. I really don't enjoy JavaScript. I don't enjoy how there's a new framework like every couple of months. So I love .NET and C#, and that's where I stay pretty much.
Yeah, I'm not really. I should have went to the docs instead. I went to the Microsoft Azure document, or main Azure site.
Sure. Yeah. So the place where you can buy it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do that sometimes, and I don't mean to. Let's see here.
I know. Honestly, the docs are so good these
Java
days.
Spring.
That's the thing. Okay.
Yeah. So they got it built up. ASP.NET Core, .NET Core, .NET Framework, Azure Functions, which I've used it in there. Really nice in there, and then they have Java Spring. What I would love for them to get Angular. So our front end is Angular, right? And we have a desperate need for feature flags, and we still haven't implemented something. I started to play around with it, basically putting a front end on it. That so I'm using app config in the background, but then basically my client apps would then hit the service.
Okay, so like an admin screen for them.
Well, all headless, right? So it'd just be just an API that they could hit, then hit that. And I was actually playing around with because I was going to play around with what's it called? The one where you can tell it what to give you back. GraphQL.
Okay.
I was going to play with, because I haven't used GraphQL yet. I was like, let me put GraphQL in front of it. That way they can then request exactly what they want at that point. All right. I haven't had time to, finding time to do these things is sometimes the hardest thing. But I need to pick that back up, because we're actually getting ready. This whole thing I was talking about, this 51 million records thing.
Mhm.
One of the things that would be nice is, because it'll take us 3 hours to do this migration. It'd be awesome if I could turn that feature off for 3 hours, but I can't. Right?
Yep.
I can't turn it off. I have to turn off everything, which obviously we're not shutting down our whole system for 3 hours, right? And so, which we've got that figured out, right? But it would have been nice if I could have just turned it off. We know no one's writing stuff for those 3 hours. Had a little message, hey, we're doing some upgrades, right? But So, but instead we're gonna do it a different way. And basically make more work for ourselves. But but that's where app configuration definitely would have played off. If we were doing it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But, so you've been getting you've been liking Blazor?
Yeah. So it's interesting because so far I've been most in the Blazor server side, just because that's more like my natural skill set.
Sure.
Again, like I said, not loving JavaScript as it is. It originally, the first couple of weeks I played with it, reminded me a ton of .NET 2 web forms. I mean, there's a life cycle, there's events, you can do code behind in a way. And I was like, okay, that's a little scary because no one wants to go back to web forms. We still have to deal with it once in a while here, which is not my favorite thing. But B, it's like, well, wait a minute, it's kind of familiar. So if you are a web forms developer or even a .NET MVC developer, like picking up Blazor server was like, it was kind of fast. It was like, okay, there's Razor components and everything else is pretty much almost the same, just a few little tweaks here and there. And it came pretty naturally. So I was able to build out that CrossFit event thing pretty quickly. And it does seem very clean. It seems pretty elegant. And I love how it's basically like, in a way, you've kind of got Signal R back there doing all the work for you, even though they don't really talk about it a ton. And all of a sudden it behaves like a spa. I mean, I know that the WebAssembly version has its advantages, and that's being pushed very big. And that's kind of the next thing I want to check out. But for getting something done quickly, I use that Blazor server template. And even like the last couple of weekends, as I've been getting ready for the talk, updated it to the new .NET 5 version. And the tooling is coming along. It's pretty exciting. I do like it. And every conference that, even going back into last year, that was the thing that Microsoft really wanted to talk about was Blazor. We're going to do Blazor. Blazor is the future. So I feel like that's something that as a .NET specialist, I guess, that I should know quite a bit about. And that's kind of why I've been checking it out. Have you had the chance to play with it a ton yet?
No, not really. I just need to find a project to work with it. And I mean, obviously, like I said, we're Angular, so so we're not going to use it where we're at my company. So I need to find a personal project to fool with it. Because I will say that, I mean, I've looked enough. I have a good idea what it is and understanding of it. And I will say, unpopular opinion, I actually like web forms. Yes, I know about all the problems about web forms, right? Because I lived through all of them, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I actually like them, right? I mean, it was just something, now grant you, because I think part of it was because I was a VP program before that, right? I did the Windows Form stuff, and that's what web forms was written for. It was written for people like me who did the Windows Forms back in the day. Yeah. Hey, here's a way how using the same concepts, do it in there. So for me, it's more natural, right? Which is why I really do want to pick up Blazor, because I think a lot of it will just pick up. I think I'll be able to pick up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you're going to be able to kind of almost one-to-one, like, okay, old web form thing here really means component over here. This means that. Like, it's a pretty easy mental mapping. And I mean, I did web forms for years. I was part of the web forms 1.0 beta when it first came out, trying to go from ASP Classic to that. And that was like, wow, what is this life cycle thing? And I think the challenge is nowadays, new developers aren't necessarily learning anything in that world, and they come to have to maintain an application like that. And it's like, well, wait, what is this life cycle thing? And what's page init, pre-render? What is all this? Like, but in its day, it was one of the best things out there. The challenge I have with it now is to do the high-end marketing sites that we do that have need for like schema.org and full control over the markup with open graph tags and meta and semantic HTML that's accessible, that's where the framework really shows its age, because you fight it to get it to render the exact way you want it to. And that's kind of our Blazor's MVC is a little nicer nowadays, but
Sure.
don't get me wrong, I've spent hours and hours and hundreds of hours of my life doing web forms, and at that time I did like it quite a bit.
It's funny you talk about the life cycle. It reminded me of the old interview questions. Okay, what is the life cycle of a web form page?
Yeah. Stand up on this whiteboard and list all 10 different life cycle events in the right order. And like, wait, there's a.
I got to admit, I'm not sure I could do it anymore. I did know it because I interviewed so many people, but I did know it down pat. I don't think I remember it all now.
I'll tell you what, that sounds like the next time we're together in person, Chad, that's our challenge. We're going to do a bourbon to warm up. We're going to be at a whiteboard, and then we're going to race to see who can actually write it the fastest. But you have to close with the bourbon afterwards as well. That we'll make that the deal.
There you go. That sounds good. Just don't know when we'll be able to meet in person again, but
who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to. Sure, I mean, how is it in Michigan with COVID?
Well, not great. I mean, we are fairly locked down. If you follow the national news, I'm sure our governor has been all over it with. Right now, it's a completely mandated masks everywhere, and it's not even an option unless you're medically. There's a medical reason that you can't. All restaurants are not even 50% open. I think they're like 25 or 30% open. Most of it should be outside. Gyms are still closed. It's unemployment is bad. We're like 25% unemployment. But the silver lining is that the number of cases in West Michigan overall has stayed kind of low. We're pretty far away from the hot zones in Detroit. My wife is actually a nurse, and she works at one of the largest hospital systems here. And she tells me some numbers about total patients that have COVID that they're treating, and it's not a very high number. So we've been kind of lucky from a health standpoint, but from an economic impact, it has been huge. And almost every company has had to do layoffs and furloughs, and we're making it through it as best we can. But I'm optimistic. I would say July has been an uptick. Even for BizStream, it's been an uptick, and things are coming back. But and the new thing is our school's going to open. That's the big thing for us. What about you guys down there?
So, a third of our population is out of work right now. Although some of that is because it's become better to be unemployed than to keep your job because of the extended benefits.
Right.
Which there's a lot to be said about that, right? But then I know. So we got face masks mandated last week, I think it was, which I think was a good thing. And then I was reading yesterday. I need to read up on this today. Apparently, we're going back to no more than 10 people events. I actually do need to find out about that because so for Code PaLOusa, the intent was that we were still going to be actually at the hotel running the central operations. But if I can only have 10 people, then that's going to then we can't do that, right? And I got to admit, I'm kind of hoping that is the case because because here's the thing, I really don't want to run an event where we're all wearing masks, because that's not going to work very well. So I don't know. I have to figure that out. Actually, I have talks with them later this week with the hotel. Okay. So our cases have not spiked as much as other places, but there has been a spike. And of course, Kentucky is a weird state, and I think a lot of states are like this. But of course, different areas of the state have different politics, and so that's been playing a lot into it. So like where Louisville is, our county has decided we're not going to open up school. I mean, they're going to go virtual. Right? Schools are open, but they're going to be virtual. But I know a lot of the states has decided that they are opening up schools. Of course, a lot of state is a lot smaller also, so that makes sense too. But it's a mess. Yeah, it really is a mess.
Yeah, I know.
I know. I didn't make it official, but last week I was telling people, I'm like, I think we're going to be like our user groups. I think we're just going to be virtual till the end of the year. I've been debating what to do with that. Right now, we're scheduled through September, but I'm kind of like, let's just schedule the rest of the year virtual, and in January we'll figure out whether or not we can go back in person.
I think, as I've talked to a lot of companies across the country, that's the general, like, well, we're going to reevaluate at the end of the year and see, is this going to change or not? I've heard many companies that say they've already decided, yep, we're fully remote 100% until the rest of the year, and we'll figure it out after that. Like at BizStream, we're like 25 or 30% operational in terms of people coming in. But even then, I'd say we only have 3-4 people a day, and we're spread out, and it's pretty, luckily our facility is pretty big, so we can spread out very easily. But yeah, it's a different world right now.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine out west, and he was they went back to their office, like, I think it was last week, and he's like, yeah, I went back in the office and my boss didn't even show up, and he's like, I went home at lunch because no one else was there. So of course, so our company, we're 100% remote anyways. We don't even have an office because that made more sense for our company, right? We're like I said, we're around the same size. We're at 30 some odd people, but we're not all here in Louisville, right? Remember, actually, the company's not even in Louisville. It's a little bit south of Louisville. Well, that's where the CEO lives, because technically that is the headquarters of the company. Is his house, right?
Nice.
Technically, the headquarters, if you look at the address, is a UPS or a post box at a UPS store, right? So hence why, for us, for the most part, it really wasn't much difference, right? Which actually is bigger a problem than you think. Because, like, when I talk to my employees, right, and they've been stressing out a little bit, and they don't even realize it, right? Because, I mean, again, the quarantine life is different. And, like, I was talking to one of my employees, and I'm like, well, you need to take vacation. Well, where am I supposed to go? I'm like, I don't care, but you need to take vacation. Right? And I even told him, and I said this publicly, so he I'm not saying anything that he's never heard before publicly, but I told him, like, dude, everyone else needs you to take a vacation, right? It's not so much that you maybe need to take a vacation. You might not think it, but the rest of us, we need a vacation from you, right? And again, it's a little bit hidden because everyone thinks, oh, well, I work from home anyways. What, this is the same thing. I'm like, yeah, it's not the same thing. It is definitely a different world.
Yep, I agree.
So, but so we know. All right. So you're big into app config. You're big into Blazor. Any other new technologies you've been really loving?
Lately, a lot of Azure Search. Search is a hard problem to figure out on a website these days, or an application, especially if you have a lot of data of different types of data, and everyone expects it to just work like Google or Amazon, and find exactly what they're thinking of. And when you build a website for someone and they go, why doesn't it work like Google? There's an explanation behind that usually. So we've been doing that more and more, and I've been kind of personally interested in it because it has a connection to cognitive services with AI and machine learning. So, we've got a couple of clients who have some interesting search needs, and I'm, explaining the benefits that they can get with the technology. We have a really couple good examples of how you can do dynamic facets, and it's so fast. That's one of the things I love about Azure Search is how fast it is to get results out. Because again, you're just hitting an API and you're bringing back results. I love how you can have scoring profiles, and you can boost and move some weights around on certain fields of data to hone in the search experience. Recently, we've been playing a lot with the out of the box. It hooks up to Power BI for reporting on your analytics of your search, who's searching, how often they're searching. So the portal will give you a download of the default analytics dashboard for it, but then you can actually modify it from there. Although that's an interesting story a little bit. You get into like the Power BI query language and like Power ML and a few other kind of weird things that
Power BI ML. I have not heard of that before.
I think it's ML. I can't remember exactly if it's Power ML or not, but and then you get into Cousteau queries with the Azure log system, and it's kind of a different world. I'm not totally in the business intelligence world a ton, which is obviously where Power BI probably is used all the time, but it's interesting. I love how it all kind of connects together, and you can. We have federated search with one of these projects to where there's a database for the website content in one spot. There's 3 third-party services for events over here and webinars over here and journals and publications and books over here. there are all these different places that, as long as we have an API or an RSS feed to get the data out, we can bring that into our Azure Search Index, combine that with the main website contents, and kind of deliver federated results all in one place and provide one like search gateway. Even though this company is big, they have like 27 to 30 different web properties. Their plan is to kind of put together one search for all of them, and then just facets on the side of, do you want this year's data? Do you want this site or that site? Do you want this topic or keyword? So Azure Search can do all of that. And even though we were loading up, we're close to like 10,000 items in the search index, it still is just blazing faster than any other search thing I've used. And actually, I think the very first time I spoke at Code PaLOUsa, that was my session. It was about Azure Search. But back then, it couldn't do all the things that it does now. So it's been nice to be a part of that technology. And that's one of the things I do enjoy lately, especially with trying to figure out, like, can we get like images in there to add search results or enrich the search pipeline, as it's called. It's some pretty cool stuff. So
yeah, I need to look at it again. I looked at it about a year ago. So we're using Elasticsearch. Okay. And a year ago, we it boiled down to we just couldn't find enough value to move. Because again, we're getting a lot out of Elasticsearch already, and we're doing managed, so it's not like we're running Elasticsearch.
Oh yeah, okay, yep.
So so it boiled down to, well, we're not really going to save much, and we just weren't getting enough more benefit out of Azure Search. I might have to look at it again because see what they've done in the last year with it.
Right. And at the end of the day, it is pretty similar. And I could see, like, if you're already in one of them, marginal benefit to swap the two. But it's probably.
And when you get down to the bottom, it's the same technology at the bottom.
Right.
And I forgot the name of the technology, but
it's Lucene.
Lucene, yeah. So they're both in the end they're indexed the same way. It's just what each are adding to it, right?
Right.
Right.
But like I like how. In Azure Search, if you have a blob that has like Word documents and PDF, Excel, like you can search into that too and provide those as the same as all your other index results. Like that's cool. Does Elasticsearch do that from a document search?
I'm not sure because I have a guy who does that, right? So,
nice.
And because he's our guy who does all the ML stuff, all the AI stuff. He does the search because that's the mindset he's in, right? And I always joke with him, especially when he talks about machine learning stuff, and I'm like, I get where you're going. I had no idea that path you took, but it's beyond me. But so I'm not really sure because, like I said, when I say I dug into it, hey, Daniel, dig into this and tell me what tell me if we should upgrade. Well, I might have to try to find some time this fall to look at it again.
Good.
So cool. Well, it's been awesome having you for the past hour or so. I really appreciate you're still speaking to Code PaLOUsa, right? I mean, it's a hard thing to stick around for a virtual conference because it's not the same thing. Right. I mean, have you presented yet virtually? Anywhere?
I have once.
Okay.
I have once. It was a kind of a thing with Kentico, and it is a little different.
Yeah.
The thing I think that I miss the most is the audience feedback, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't just get that as a part of it. So if you're listening and you're going to attend Code PaLOUsa, please try to talk to the speakers during the session, raise questions, give feedback. That always makes it easier if you're a speaker. I love hearing the feedback of even calling me out, like, "Hey, wait, what are you talking about right there?" That it always makes it better if you can have that interaction.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the one problem that we're still going to have at Code PaLOUsa. The software we're using doesn't do that part very well. Does everything else really well. Okay. But I will say, and that's get me on my soapbox real quick. When you attend a user group virtually, keep your camera on. Right? It really does make a difference.
Right.
Now obviously don't keep your camera off. You're going to go to sleep during the session.
Yeah, or if you're walking away to get lunch somewhere, don't do that.
Yeah, but it really does make a difference to even just see faces, right? It's the human mind knows that your human mind knows that you're on video, right? When you're presenting and when you're watching, And so you need to do everything you can to simulate more realistic viewing. So,
Right.
but awesome. Any parting thoughts on your side?
I just want to say thanks again for having me speak at Code PaLOusa.
Oh.
I mean, it's one of my favorite ones to talk about each year. I will keep submitting as long as you keep accepting me, and definitely can't wait to be there. Hopefully next year in person.
Yeah.
And yeah, no. Other than that, if you want to check out my podcast or my blog, I run that at mcbeeve.com. You can also just search for Brian McKeiver on the internet. You'll probably find that really quickly. And
Here, let me I'm gonna post it in here, and I'm gonna make sure I look it up so I don't spell it wrong.
so it's MCBEEV, and it's funny because it's a take off of a high school nickname for me. That's where it came from. Everyone usually asks me that. What does McBeeve? What does it mean? So my last name is McKeiver, right? A couple guys would shorten it to McKeeve because it's easier to say. And then one idiot at some point said McBeeve because he thought it was funny instead of McKeeve, and it just kind of stuck. Everyone in my high school just called me McBeeve. So ever since then, it's been McBeeve.com.
So it's funny. You actually in Sessionize, you don't have it listed. Your website. You also don't have it on your Twitter page.
Oh, I thought it was in the profile, but maybe not. I don't. Yeah.
I just looked there, but I got it. So, and I just posted on. Definitely check out his site. I was looking at this morning. There's some really good articles in there.
Thanks.
And definitely, I mean, a lot of us are at some point we have to find a CMS system, and I'm not gonna tell you which one to look at, but I mean, again, Brian talks about them, and he's got a podcast about it. So it's check out those.
Yeah, definitely. Kentico Experience is pretty cool if you need a full digital experience platform. Kentico Content's pretty friendly if you need a headless CMS, which is if you're doing Jamstack like Gatsby or anything like that. It's a great tool as well, and I talk about that all the time.